You're listening to the Heart Lessons Podcast with me, Sarah Rieke. Real women, real stories, real faith. Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Heart Lessons Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah, and I'm so glad to have you joining me here today. Today, you are listening to episode number 48 of the podcast with my special guest, Candace Cameron Bure. And if you are a child of the 90s like I am, then you might know Candace from her role as DJ Tanner on the hit sitcom Full House. Since then, she has gone on to do some incredible things. She's a speaker and an author. She has been on Dancing with the Stars. She has co-hosted The View. She has her own Hallmark series, the Aurora Teagarden Mystery Series. And she also stars in the Netflix spinoff of Full House, Fuller House. So Candace does it all. And today we are going to talk about her newest book, Kind is the New Classy, and I just think that her message could not have come at a better time because something about the increased use of screens and the anonymity that we have behind those screens makes us all feel a little too brave sometimes in what we can say and what we can be willing to type out in response to something someone wrote. And so I just think her message is so incredibly important. So we talk about her book. We talk about what it means to be kind to somebody when you don't actually share the same beliefs and you actually have contradictory beliefs, but that you can still treat them with kindness and with dignity. We talk about how to treat your family with kindness because sometimes it's the people in your own home and under your own roof that are the hardest to show kindness to. And we talk about kindness as love in action. I was so excited to get this opportunity to talk to Candace, and I know that you are going to find this conversation so incredibly encouraging and just give you a little boost if you're struggling in the kindness department. I know this is going to be exactly what you need. Don't forget that you can find the show notes for this episode and every episode of the podcast on sarahrieke.com/podcast. And the show notes are going to be available there in order of most recent episode. All right, well, I am just so excited for you to hear what Candace has to say and just our conversation on the importance of being kind. And so without further ado, here is my conversation with Candace Cameron Bure. Well, Candace Cameron Bure, welcome to the Heart Lessons Podcast today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited. And I know I was telling you before we started recording that I was just such a huge fan of Full House growing up. And I think if you told 8-year-old Sarah that she would be getting to talk to you right now, she would just flip out. And this is the depth of my fandom. And this is a true story. It was 1991, 1992 time frame. I was in kindergarten. My mom was pregnant with my sister. And for some reason, my mom wanted me to pick my sister's name. And so I picked the name Michelle because I was such a huge fan. So my sister, who's 25 years old, is the legacy of how much I loved Full House growing up.
That is so great. I love that. And I love that she trusted you.
I know, right?
That's a huge responsibility to have you name your sister.
I feel like she's lucky that I was such a level-headed kid. That could have gone a real different way.
No kidding.
All right, Candace. Well, I am just so excited to be able to talk with you, and I'm sure so many people listening are familiar with who you are and what you do, but for those that don't, just give us a brief little bio of who you are and what you do.
Sure. Well, I've been acting for a really, really long time, and since I was 5 years old.
That's crazy.
And I was on Full House as a kid. I played DJ Tanner, and then in my career currently, you might know me from I co-hosted The View for a few years and was on Dancing with the Stars, and we're now shooting the 4th season of Fuller House, which is kind of the continuation of Full House, on Netflix. And I'm in lots of Hallmark movies, so that might be a whole other place you might recognize me from. And then I also write books and produce other movies and all kinds of stuff.
How has it been to have the whole Full House team back together for Fuller House? Has that been just really fun?
Yeah, incredible.
That's awesome.
Are loving it. We just feel like we've been given a gift every day we get to go to work because
so good.
They're all my best friends I get to work with. We're having a blast.
Yeah. And it's like, I imagine it would be like those friendships where you don't see each other for a while and then you get back together and you just pick up right where you left off. And that's like the best feeling.
Yes, it is. Although we never lost, we've always been in
Oh,
contact
that's
and
great.
have maintained our friendships over the last 30 years. So it is really special for us to get to do the show, do Fuller House.
That's good. Okay, well, you just released a book called Kind is New Classy, The Power of Living Graciously. And I just think this book could not have come at a better time, quite honestly, because just in the time that we're living, people can get so brave behind a computer screen and say things that you would just never say to somebody if they were face to face with you. And so I just think this message is so really pertinent and important right now. So let's just lay the foundation here. Why is it important for people in general to just be kind?
Oh goodness. Well, I think just as you mentioned, we've kind of lost this over time, and especially where we can see a divide politically and socially. It feels like kindness is almost countercultural nowadays. I feel like we're living in a very me first mentality. And I wanted to just put the spotlight back on kindness. And I think it is such a simple thing to do, and yet it takes a lot of effort because it's not what comes naturally to us.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like our sense of like, my voice needs to be heard and you need to know what I think is like, it just takes over that for some reason.
It does. And I also think that because while technology is incredible and awesome and amazing in so many ways and really makes a very big world feel much smaller, it's also, we've lost our patience because of it. We have everything at our fingertips. We can get answers so quickly. We can find people so quickly. We can share an opinion so quickly. And because of that, I feel that's another reason why we tend to react emotionally and not give ourselves a minute to think through things thoughtfully, and therefore choose to have kindness or be respectful or be calm with conversation. And I mean, I see this with all of us, and I don't even, not talking about young people, but even, older people, middle-aged people, wherever you are, it's just like everyone, negativity breeds negativity, but in the same way, positivity can breed the same thing, breed positivity back. And so we have to just change the mindset and bring kindness back and change the culture. And I believe we can do that, but it really starts with you. It starts with me. It starts one person at a time.
Yeah. So practically speaking, what is that going to look like, when you are faced with a situation where you want to be unkind? Like, how do you actively and proactively choose kindness? What is that going to look like?
Well, I do believe I share some tools that are really simple in the book, but I really do believe that you have to work at kindness. You have to build it like a muscle, because it's not something that always comes naturally to us. And there are ways that you do that by creating new habits for yourself. And it's something that has to be practiced. But I talk about 5 very easy steps that when I'm in a place that can be reactionary but want to choose kindness, I talk first about taking a deep breath, and then taking a beat. Take a minute to think through things thoughtfully. It might not be a whole minute, it might be 10 seconds, but take a beat before you talk, so it's not just a knee-jerk reaction. And then switch roles. Think of the person that you're talking to. Think of where they may be coming from, what their circumstances may be, what their worldview may be, so that you have a better understanding of why they have that opinion, instead of just thinking about your own opinion and why they disagree with you. But there are certainly reasons why they've come to their conclusions as you've come to yours. So switch roles. That often will give you a sense of compassion for someone. And when we do have compassion for other people, it softens our heart and we tend to be more gentle with our answers. I talk about going to God through prayer. I think that is the most powerful and important step. And sometimes in the heat of a moment, it might be a super quick little fast prayer like, Lord, help me at this moment. And sometimes we can, it takes more time to really pray on things for several days. And then finally, that last step I talk about is to don't be afraid to ask for what you want. If you have been challenged, you can still choose to be kind and ask for what you want. Kindness doesn't mean it's weakness. Kindness doesn't cower. Kindness can still be bold. It's just staying respectful in your character and treating the other person with dignity.
Yeah, that's good to think about the other person. Like you said, just put yourself in their shoes and the whole dignity aspect. Like, yeah, you want them to walk away feeling a certain way. I think thinking that through is going to change how your answer is going to come out.
Yes. I mean, nobody, I don't believe that anybody's ever changed someone's mind by putting them down or being angry at them or belittling them. That's never going to change someone's mind or heart.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There's a quote that you have from your book that really stood out to me. And you wrote, "Years ago, I made a decision to serve Jesus with every aspect of my life. So I often think, what will people say about Jesus because of me?" And gosh, that's just huge. And I think even as Christians, I mean, we are called to live lives of kindness and love, just as Jesus did while he walked the earth. And I think sometimes Christians can be tempted to be unkind because we think if somebody is different than us or voicing a different opinion than us and we treat them kindly, it's almost as if we're aligning with what they stand for, which is, incorrect. I mean,
absolutely.
Certainly you have done this many, many times in the public eye. So how have you done this, and how have you displayed kindness to somebody when they in fact were, talking about things that you didn't align with, but you could still exercise kindness?
Sure. Well, there's a time and a place within conversations, whether it's appropriate to share your viewpoint when you disagree with someone, and sometimes it's okay to not share your viewpoint if and it doesn't mean that you're agreeing with that person. And I think when I talk to people when we don't have the same point of view, I always think it comes back to what words I choose, the tone in which I speak to someone, because I can disagree and I can respectfully disagree. And I think it's important that we do that. But if my tone is always still kind and I'm open to listening, I think that's something that so many of us forget to do, is to listen to the other person so that they feel heard. If they feel that they've been heard and we truly understand, but at the end of it still say, well, yeah, I can understand why you feel that way. It's still not what I agree with, but it's still incredibly civil and it still stays kind. And I guess over the years have chosen to not only listen to people, but as I've gotten older, but to be bold. But I think you can be incredibly kind and bold at the same time. And I think that's what I love to challenge myself with, is that I don't ever want to be afraid to share my opinion with someone or share my faith with someone, knowing that they might not receive it well. But as long as I am kind about it, I think it's always okay and never inappropriate. And it doesn't. The last thing I want to do is for someone to think that if I don't speak up, that I am in agreement with them. But but again, there's a time and a place that sometimes it might not always be appropriate. You could say, like, I'd love to have this conversation with you later at a different time where you can share them. So you're not just agreeing with that person, so they're walking away thinking you hold the same viewpoint.
But it sounds like it's been a journey for you. Like you said, you're always trying to find that balance between kind and bold. So where did you start realizing that this was kind of a tricky little tension, and how have you, developed that?
Well, I have done a lot of scary things in my life, in the sense that I have trusted God. He has either opened doors or put me in places that scare the living daylights out of me. And I always think to myself, well, I know that I trust God, and I know that He has my back. And that hasn't always been the case. That obviously has grown in my faith over the years. And I've been a Christian walking in my faith for over 20 years now. But I've learned through my journey that I really do trust God. And sometimes being in the most frightening and scary situations is the best place I can be in, because it's when I have to trust and rely on God the most. And that has really given me a boldness, because I just trust that God will give me the words that I need, or the disposition that I need at that moment. And He has. It's been proven in my life over time, which has built my trust and then encourages me to continue to be bold.
Yeah, that's such good advice. And it just reminds me of a few episodes ago here on this podcast. Katie Bennett was just talking about how to be patient with her children and show kindness to her children. And she said that in a moment when all of a sudden there's, dried spaghetti all over the floor, like a box of spaghetti the kid just got into, she prays, Lord, what does obedience look like in this moment? And that sounds like exactly what you're saying, is that, even when you're faced with certain confrontations, it's like the Lord has given you what you need in that moment to walk in obedience in what His love and kindness and graciousness is going to look like towards that person.
Well said.
Well, I should have asked this at the very beginning, and I'm sorry that I didn't, but I would love to hear your faith story, your story of coming to faith in Christ.
Oh, sure. Well, I didn't grow up in a Christian household, which most people assume that I did, but my family, we started going to church when I was 12 years old for the very first time. And my dad really didn't want anything to do with religion, but had agreed to start going to church. And so my faith journey really began at 12 years old. I had given my heart, my life to God, to Jesus. At 12, I got baptized, but I really didn't start walking with the Lord until my early 20s. And that I just, being a Christian was more of a label that I said, oh, sure, I'm a Christian, but I didn't actively read my Bible. I didn't actively have a relationship with God in any way. And then when I got married and we started a family, and when my children were little, that's when I started thinking about God again and thinking, what did I want to teach my children, and who is God? And I realized I didn't really know God. And I went and saw God on Christmas and on Easter and on certain holidays.
Right.
So I thought, this is obviously really important and something that I don't want to miss in my life. I don't want to pass my life by and think, oh my goodness, I didn't even give any of this my attention, and maybe I'll get it wrong at the end of the day. And that's what really jolted my journey to want to know God and know if what I thought at 12 was real and what I still believe now. And obviously it is the most important part of my life and it gives me the foundation of who I am today. But that's when I really started growing in my faith walk, was in my early 20s.
Yeah. What did you discover? What was one of the first things that you discovered that was like, yeah, this is it. This is real. This is what I want my kids to know.
Oh, well, the thing that really did it for me was understanding. core of the gospel message. So this may sound so simple, and yet I really never grasped it because I didn't understand sin, and I didn't understand my relationship to sin and Jesus. And when I say that, it's because I always thought growing up that I was a good person. I was always on the straight and narrow path. I was a really good kid. I made more good decisions than bad decisions. I respected my parents for the most part, in general, and compared to other people, relatively, I was a very good person. So when I would hear the message, "Oh, Jesus died for your sin," I thought, well, that's great, but I'm not really a sinner because I'm really good.
Yeah. I don't have that much sin.
Right, exactly. So that's what changed. That was the eye opener for me. It was literally like a veil fell off of my eyes, and I understood the gospel message for the first time in my life, because when I looked at the 10 Commandments and could see what sin is to God's standard as opposed to the world's standard of sin, I saw for the first time that I was a sinner in God's eyes, because he holds a much higher and different standard of goodness than we do as people and on the earth by human standards. So when I could understand that I actually was a sinner and in need of God's grace, it changed everything for me. That's when I understood why Christ died, that Jesus took the punishment that I deserve for me. And it gave me such a sense of utter gratitude towards God that I then wanted to, not out of obligation, but out of gratitude, to live my life for God and find that my purpose in life is to honor God and glorify him in all that I do.
Yeah, that's so well put. And I think, I feel like I would put myself in a similar category. Like growing up, I was like pretty good. And when that's your testimony, it can be hard, like you said, to be like, well, like, I guess he didn't have to like suffer that much for me because I didn't do that many things wrong. But even if you did like the one thing, like he still had to die because that sin still separated you from the Father. And so just like when you come to that realization, it is, I mean, there's nothing more humbling and like you said, nothing that makes you more grateful for what Jesus did, because you don't have to pay the price for your own sin. So yeah, thank you for that testimony. Yeah. Well, let's go back to chatting about kindness. And I think sometimes the hardest kindness to show is to the people in your own home. Sometimes that's the people under your roof and the people you're doing life with day to day. That can just be the hardest way to show kindness. So how do you practically live that out? What are your strategies for, with your husband and your children? And what do you do when you are tempted to be unkind to them? And nobody's ever going to know, really, It's not on TV. It's not broadcasted at that point.
Right, exactly.
So what do you do?
It's so easy because we usually give the people that we love the most, we're giving them the very ends of us, at the end of our day, and it's the least of what we have. And so we it's not usually, but at times treat them the worst because we're spent. And it's, when we think about that, or when you really do think about it, it's just like, it's horrible. It's awful. So, in a very practical way, I mean, I always want to try to create the best environment I can at home. And even knowing that I am tired or I've had a long day, I have to recognize that they have too. We're all in the same boat. And that time is it's so precious. And we have to muster up the energy to still give them the best of our day. And not just the leftovers. And that's connecting. It's giving our time that when I'm home, I want to be focused at home. So I want to give them my full attention. I'm going to put my computer away. I'm going to turn my phone off. And when it's dinner time and thankfully we actually still eat dinner together quite a bit for a family of 5, and I have 3 teenagers. we're home, but I want to give them my full attention and listen to them, and so that they know that I've heard them, I've heard their stories, I can pour into their lives, and some days it's easier to do that than others, but also as a mom, when it comes to my children, I realize that I only have a few years left with them at home. And so that encourages me greatly. And as far as my husband to be kind at home, well, we've been married for 22 years. So some days, again, that's easier to do than other days.
Right.
We know each other pretty darn well at this point, but it's really about, again, it's connecting and drowning out everything else around us so we can have focused time. And some days that might be for 30 minutes, and it might be a lunch date, or maybe my husband and I got a very special weekend. But it's like you really have to concentrate on the time and be present when you're with them. And I think that's the kindest thing you can do, and really it stands out the most. We'll all feel good and connected at that point when we're able to do that.
Yeah, and that just reminds me of what you said about how to just like listen. When you listen to somebody, even if their viewpoint is different, like they feel validated, they feel heard. Mm-hmm. And I feel like when you take the time with your family, it's like you are like listening almost like with your whole body, like with all of everything that you have, you're saying like, I'm here for you and I want to validate who you are and what we have. And that's just such a great priority. I have little kids. I have a 7, 3, and 1-year-old. So we are in a different stage. And I feel like kindness, listen, my kindness really struggles after 8 p.m. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
It is so hard. It's like, me and my friend were saying, like, getting kids in bed, it's like whack-a-mole. Like, you put one in and somehow like, the other one's in the bathroom. You're like, what is happening?
It's so true. That's a funny example. I love it. But I get it. It feels like those days are kind of far away from me. And yet I have lots of little nieces and nephews and godchildren too. So I'm in that mode a lot as well with them. Yeah. And I know it's tiring.
Yeah. And I know it is so important. I think that they see me being kind because they are primarily going to learn how to be kind by what I do. I
was just going to say that the biggest example is always going to be you as far as your children are concerned. And it is hard because on those nights, after 8 p.m. and we do get frustrated and we're tired. And yet when we have those days that we totally lose it in front of our kids, we have to be the first to recognize it and let them know, like, hey, you know what, mommy got really frustrated and mommy shouldn't have talked that way, or mommy shouldn't have been that angry, but this is why, because I'm tired, I'm this, I'm that. You talk and you have these conversations, but when you admit to your kids, like, hey, I messed up here and I ask you for forgiveness and I ask you for your grace. Those are great examples because that's how our children are going to learn kindness. Everything's coming from us. So if we don't show that, if we aren't living out what we're talking about, then our kids can see right through us. Kids absolutely know when someone's being a phony and not being honest, or just talking about their words and not actually doing them in action.
Yeah, and my kids, even though they're young, they will call me out. They'll just use my own words back at them, whatever they hear me telling them about being kind. They're like, Mommy, you yelled and maybe you should have said this instead. I'm like, and then you just like swallow your pride. You're like, you're right, sweetheart. I should have done that.
Yep. Their kids are humbling in the best of ways.
Oh, they are great. I don't mean to say only negative things about my kids. I adore them.
No,
but
not at all.
When it comes to kindness and patience, it's a challenge for sure. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yep.
So I was kind of thinking through like kindness, and I know kindness is one of the fruits of the Spirit, which is in Galatians. And I was just wondering your opinion on, because there's, love and patience and gentleness and goodness all lumped into the fruits of the Spirit. And how do they differ from kindness? Like, do you think there is a distinction? Or is it all sort of the same spirit? Like, what do you think about that?
It's such a good question, and I was really thinking about it, and there is such a fine line, I believe, in some of those fruits of the Spirit, some of those words. There's such a small difference in them, but when I thought about love and kindness, I almost feel like, God told us He's our best example of love and wants us to love, God with all our heart. He wants us to love our neighbor as ourselves. I think that love is like the primary word in the sense. And I think the rest of them almost fall underneath the category in the sense that we act out love. Like kindness is love in action.
Okay.
Gentleness is love in action. I think those are all ways in which we show love by treating people with all the rest of the fruits of the Spirit. That's kind of how my brain, thought of it. I don't know whether that's right or wrong, but that's how I see it, that kindness is love in action. It's something we do. And not that, because love is also a verb. Love is something you do. But love can also be emotional. And I don't have to be emotional or have an emotional attachment or an emotional feeling to be kind to someone.
No, that is a good distinction. Yeah. Yeah, you don't have to feel it, especially in those moments when somebody is, getting on your nerves. You can still choose kindness, even though you feel all the opposite.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's very good. Okay. Candace, who in your life would you say is like just the perfect embodiment of just this classic kindness that you are striving to have in your own life and also striving to teach the world? Well,
this answer might not surprise you, but Jesus is that model. That model example for me.
No, that's great.
And he's it, because Jesus always showed kindness, and it was never conditional. He always treated people and showed kindness to them no matter how they treated him. And Jesus recognized the image of God in every single person he encountered and always extended that kindness, no matter what he would receive in return. So there are so many examples of Jesus's kindness in the Bible, and I share some of those in the book. But I mean, he's the ultimate model that I look to for kindness. But then, even in a very practical way, although I do think that is incredibly practical for me, because I can go back into the Bible and remind myself and look at those examples every day. So I don't think that they feel very relatable to me, even though they are very old examples. But then I can see people in my everyday life that are such great examples of kindness. And I always want to point that out. I want to put the spotlight on those people and what they do. And it's recognizing not because they need to be recognized, or the sense that they're wanting recognition for it. That's what I meant to say. Not that they're wanting recognition for it, but I love when I see kind acts in my everyday life, whether it's someone, helping an elderly person cross the street, or someone opening a door for someone, or just smiling. I love to encourage those people and say, hey, I saw you do that. That was wonderful. Keep it up. So I'm always looking for those examples, and those people encourage me. Just everyday people being kind are wonderful examples that I look to and look out for.
Yeah, and it feels good to see that it's still happening. I think it's easy to believe that, like we kind of said at the beginning, kindness is dead or something, or it's not trendy anymore. But when you see somebody doing something kind for a stranger, or when you see kindness out in the wild, it stirs something in you to want to do that in your own life as well.
It does. It's a proven scientific fact. Kindness there's a ripple effect. And when the cool thing about kindness is that whether you're extending kindness or you're receiving kindness, it chemically in your brain with serotonin and I don't know, I have all whatever.
Endorphins, I don't know, we'll say science words.
Endorphins, everything. Yeah, not serotonin. That's what you sleep. The endorphins. But it chemically actually does something in your brain and has a ripple effect on us. And it's a good thing. So look out for kindness, because you'll pass it along. It'll be passed along to other people.
Yeah. And something as simple as, like, I know a friend said that one time she was in the Starbucks drive-thru, and when she got to the window, they said, well, the car in front of you already paid for your coffee. Like, that's so simple, and it's just a few dollars, and it made her day. So just something that simple is can make all the difference.
And almost guaranteed that she will continue her day and want to extend kindness to someone else just because it was extended to her that morning.
Yeah, definitely. Is there a scripture or sort of a, I don't know, like a good Christian phrase that comes to mind when you feel tempted to be unkind? Is there something that you just kind of have on repeat in your mind to help you make that choice?
The one that's always, everyone says this, but I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That literally is on repeat, because it doesn't matter what situation I'm in. Even choosing kindness, I'm like, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can choose kindness right now. And sometimes when I'm taking that breath or taking that beat, that's what's always playing in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I have a friend, it's not that verse, but something that I try to think of is, she just says, I can do kind. Like, just those few simple words, I can do kind. Like, in this moment, I can do kind. I'm like, oh, it's so simple and yet so profound. But sometimes we need that. I know I need those in my mind constantly to just help me remember. And then also, like, Thumper. Do you remember Thumper from Bambi? If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything
at all. Yep.
And I think that as well. So
I would like to apply that. I would like a big banner running on everybody's social media at all times, no matter what platform, that says, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
That's right.
Oh my goodness.
And you have to click to the agreement before you can, like, post something.
Exactly. It would be great. I would love that.
I think we just changed the world, you and me. Like, I feel like that just happened. Okay, well, these are the last couple questions I ask every guest who comes on the show, Candace. So as you are walking in the story that God has written for you, what's a heart lesson that he's been reminding you of lately?
He is reminding me to push into him more. He has really been pressing intimacy with him. And that's something I'm still learning. As much as I want to grow in my knowledge of the Bible and his word, sometimes that gets overshadowed and I forget to actually just be with him and talk to him. And I hope I'm explaining the difference, but God just keeps reminding me. He's like, push into me. Even the littlest things. I want you to ask me about everything. I want you to talk to me about everything, even the things that you think are so stupid to ask me or dumb to ask me or too small to ask me. I want you to ask me everything. Yeah, that's good. And then just the fact that you can have just like a constant dialogue between you and him, like all throughout the day, and that he desires that. Yes. That's so sweet. And just testament to how much he loves us, which I don't know, kind of gives me chills. Yeah. Okay, this is the last question just for fun. What is something you're looking forward to? Oh, well, I'm really looking forward. I have two things for you, if that's okay.
Sure, yeah.
My son is graduating in 2 days. He's graduating high school, and I'm so looking forward to it. I'm just so excited for him and looking forward to what decision he's going to make over the summer, where he's going to go. That's a huge mama excitement
it's
moment.
It's not sad? It's making you happy? Not sad?
No.
I'm
going to be sad for him to leave, but I'm so excited for my kids to be independent, to live their life, to see where God's going to take them. That excites me for them.
Yeah, that's great.
And then on a totally other separate note, I'm really excited that I'm going to be directing for the first time an episode of Fuller House.
Oh, cool.
In a few months. So that's a really exciting career moment for me to try my hand at directing.
I'm going to ask this because I do not know the answer, and maybe because I'm dumb, but how do you act and direct at the same time?
it is definitely challenging to do both at the same time, but you have a lot of people, you have a whole team working with you. So as a director, I'm still going to line up all my shots, all my camera angles. I'm going to direct out and play the scene. And when I have to stand back during the rehearsal time, I'll have a person that will actually stand in and do my dialogue and my words for me to block it out for me.
Gotcha.
But then once the cameras are going, I'm going to hop in there and do it. And then when I am in a scene, then I have to trust that my camera operators, my switchers, my first ADs, my second ADs, that they're all making sure that we are getting the shots that I need because I can't visually see it at that moment.
That is something I never knew how that worked out, but I know that you'll see so-and-so executive producer / director / main actor. How does that work? I don't even know.
I know. It's a lot of jobs. And I've just been warned that I'm going to be exhausted for those few weeks.
I'm sure.
I'm up to the challenge.
Yeah, but that is exciting. I can imagine that would feel really exciting. You're kind of ready for that. You've seen all the other angles and maybe you're ready to try something new.
Definitely.
That's awesome. Well, Candace, can you tell us where we can connect with you on social media?
Oh, sure. So you can follow me on Instagram or Twitter. And my handle is Candace C. Bure, Bure. And I'm also on Facebook at Candace Cameron. So yeah, that's it. And I'm on there a lot. I love social media. I love connecting with people. So I hope that you'll join me, follow me, post, whatever. And I love talking with everyone.
Yeah, that's so fun. Okay, well, I have one favor to ask you, if you don't mind. There are two young ladies who are listening to this podcast that are super excited that I was going to get to talk to you. They're big fans of Fuller House. One is named Lainey and one is named Wendy. And I was wondering if you could just tell them hello.
Hi, Lainey. Hi, Wendy. I love that you guys love Fuller House.
Yay. All right. Well, thank you so much. And this has been such an honor and a privilege, really, to get to talk with you. And I really can't wait to just spread this message about kindness because it is incredibly important. And so just thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me on.
It was so fun to get the opportunity to talk to Candace. I'm so glad that I was able to do so. And I just think her voice is so powerful. I just love how she's so outspoken about her faith, even in such a public eye. And I think she's just such an incredible role model for all of us to be kind, even when we're in situations when we're tempted not to be. I love how she encouraged us that kindness can still be bold and it can still be direct, but it can also be kind. And that has everything to do with treating the other person with dignity and being respectful towards them with your character. And I just think that is so huge. We can be bold and we can be honest and we don't have to cave in just because we're being kind, but we can still treat someone else with dignity and with respect, even if their viewpoint is much different than ours. And that little excerpt from her book that we talked about, I just think every believer needs to have that plastered somewhere where they can see it all the time. What will people say about Jesus because of me? That is so huge. We are the ambassadors of Christ. We are the ones representing him and the ones who are supposed to be trying to draw people into him. And we have the power to attract people to the gospel or turn them away, honestly, with the way we act. And I just think that is so huge and so important, something that we all need to keep in mind. It was so special to hear Candace's story of coming to faith. I had actually never heard it before, and so I'm just so thankful that she has that testimony that she can share. And I just want to say this, for any of you listening who don't have Jesus Christ as your personal Savior, I would encourage you to definitely look into it. It is the most important decision that you will ever make. More than remembering any heart lesson on this podcast or any of the guests or any of the books or any of the projects that they have going on, I want you to remember Christ and what he has done for you and for the whole world. And just know that I know all of us, every single person on this earth has done something wrong. We have all sinned, and that sin separates us from the Father, from Father God, because he is perfect and he is holy. but he desires to have a relationship with us. And so in order to bridge that gap, in order to reconcile that broken relationship, God sent his son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross so that his blood can cover your sins. And if you accept what Jesus has done on the cross, then you are instantly a part of God's family. And when he looks on you, he doesn't see your sin. He sees the blood of Christ. And that is the most beautiful news any of us could ever hear. So friend, if you are not sure if you have ever made the choice to trust Christ as Savior, or if you know for certain that you've never trusted Christ as Savior, don't leave it there. I will have links in the show notes to take you to find out a little bit more about how to accept Christ as your Savior. And my prayer today is that you would solidify that part of your faith, that you would invite Christ as Lord of your life, and that you would accept this beautiful gift that he extends to you, that you are forever made clean before the eyes of the Father because of what he did on the cross for you. Well, you heard Candace say that she loves connecting with people on social media, so don't forget to check her out and follow her. I will have links to all of her socials on the show notes page. And also to mine, you can connect with me this week, and I would love to chat with you about kindness and what you took away from this episode. I, for one, thought it was just such an uplifting and encouraging episode. Just a reminder to be kind, and it's so simple, and yet something that is so easy to forget and so easy to neglect putting into practice. Well, I'm so excited to let you know that every Tuesday in July, I have an episode planned to come out for you, featuring so many wonderful guests, wonderful women sharing what the Lord is doing in their lives and how he is leading them. And so I can't wait to share all of their stories with you. Up next will be Tracy Murtha, and she is the wife of Greg Murtha, who passed away a little under 1 year ago. And she is just continuing to spread his message of loving and embracing life, even when unexpected things come your way. And so I know you're just going to love hearing from her. A big thanks again to Candace for chatting with me on the podcast today and just spreading her message of kindness. I hope you catch on to it and continue that ripple effect in your life and touch others with it as well. All right, friends, well, I will be back here with you next week. Thank you again for listening. And as always, I hope you found this episode inspiring and encouraging to help you walk well in the story that God has written especially for you. Bye, guys.